700 million internet users, the advent of 5G technology, the technological foundation of Indian news is evolving. A churn like never before is on. Digital cannot be divorced from broadcast anymore. We are at the precipice of a tri-junction of impeccable journalism, world-class packaging, and next-in-class technology. Now on the NBF Future Conclave, gear up for an unmissable discussion on the future of news, the TV plus digital future. And to set the context for this panel, may I invite on stage Mr. Vikram Sahai, who is the Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, also an IRS officer of the 1992 cadre. Mr. Vikram Sahai, if I can request you to give us a short keynote address, sir, from the podium, sir. Stage is yours, Mr. Sahai.
Good afternoon, everybody, and let me thank the NBF for having invited me and to share my thoughts on the future of news, TV and digital for this very distinguished audience. I'm very happy that the NBF has organized this national conclave, and especially having called the channels of the vernacular languages, because vernacular languages hold a very, very important space in this very diverse linguistic population that we have. And I think with the wide viewership they have, they are no less important than the news channels, English news channels, in fact more they are. Well, it's been a pity that over the last 2 years, we have not been able to have such large gatherings and meet in such large scale because of the widespread pandemic. And even though the problem is far from over, I think it's been a real magic and marvel how we have been able to overcome it with the grit and determination of the government and the foresightedness. And I think the great work which our frontline workers, doctors, paramedics all have done, the scientists and pharmaceuticals, and the vaccination drive, which has been almost unparalleled internationally. And here I would say the role of the media was very, very important. It was not far back when the United Nations had said that this is like an infodemic, the type of fake news which is spreading around pandemic. And while the government took very good swift steps for that, I think the media played a very, very important role in trying to ensure that the news which is going on to the people about a disease which was very less known, very less heard of, was the correct, factually correct and balanced. And while the ministry did, I remember I would talk to people at 10 p.m. in the night, tell them this is the decision, please convey to the people. And that is how the media played a very, very important role. And kudos to all of you who are here for having been so responsible during real difficult times with this country faced. Well, I must say, in both crisis times and good times, the television and print are here to stay and stay for long. While there is a discernible shift towards digital media, and all of us are aware of that because of the powered by technology, but to a very large extent, the good news that is coming on traditional TV platforms, on newsprint, the same thing is going on the digital version. So the chunk of good news, the chunk of the balanced news, whether it's on digital also, it is coming from the traditional media platforms. And therefore, even though there is a mushrooming of the standalone digital news outlets on the intermediary platforms like YouTube, etc., I think the responsibility and the credibility of the traditional news platforms stands intact. And in times to come, their responsibility would grow even further. Today I read in the newspapers, there was a report by the CSDS, the Center for Studies on Developing Societies. They had done a survey, and they said that maximum news consumption of people in this country is from the television news channels. And they also said that Doordarshan was most trustworthy. So we felt happy about it. That is not to take away anything from the private news channels. The issue of these mushrooming of news outlets, digital news platforms, and whether it is causing any threat to the traditional news platforms. In the last few years, we also saw a lot of journalists who are working in these news platforms, in the traditional news platforms, fanning out and starting their own news portals. And I think if somebody with years of experience of good journalism, if he goes into a digital platform, he will be as good as he was on a traditional news platform. A good journalist is a good journalist, irrespective of the platform on which he is. So I think the challenge is to continue with the good content, irrespective of the platform where you are. Well, we in the ministry have always tried to do this balancing act between what we have, the constitutional rights of freedom of speech and expression, and the type of reasonable restrictions in the form of self-discipline, which we always talk about self-discipline, through various code of ethics, whether it is on print or television or digital. And this balancing act has led to a situation where we developed this three-tier regulatory mechanism. And I must compliment the NBF. NBF was among the first to reach out to the Government of India, to the ministry, and say, yes, we want to register ourselves both for the three-tier mechanism of television and the three-tier mechanism of digital media. And that reaching out by NBF said two things. Number one, not only to the government but to the citizens of the country, that we believe in law, we uphold the law, we respect the law, and we value the citizens' views. That is the message which NBF gave, and we are thankful to them for having done that. Well, a few things which we have done, I don't really spend too much time on that. The fact-check unit which has been there in the Press Information Bureau. One new thing which we have brought, and I think I must talk about it, is there is a research unit which we have developed. Research unit which is manned by young professionals. They are people who have degrees in journalism, they have experience of journalism, and they have hand out together as a team, and we are trying to develop some authentic documents on various aspects of how government functions on various sectors, socio-economic, health sectors. And these documents are then placed for the media to take advantage of. And I must say that a large number of stories which media is carrying is fanning out of these documents which this PIB research unit is doing. About 400 more documents have been prepared. So I will urge upon you, all of you, just go through that PIB website, see these documents. These documents could be quite useful in preparing authentic and balanced information and reaching out to the people of this country. Well, we all know that for you, for any industry, commercial considerations are important. You're there for business. But while it is possible to say that, well, that can be the only consideration as far as certain entities are concerned, you stand out as a different profession. Because what you are producing and what people are consuming has externalities. It is not enough to say that we have a news, but that whatever you are speaking over TV debates, over news, whatever you are telling about to the people, that shapes minds, that influences people, that shapes career. So there is a large externality. And therefore, the very, very important aspect of responsible journalism, I think I don't have to talk about it, all of you are quite aware of it. And all I can say is that we had to take some very decisive steps. It was a matter of real shame. Over the last few months, you might have heard or you might have read in the newspapers and television channels. It was a matter of shame, and we were constrained to block a few news channels. That was something which we had to do as a drastic step to ensure that news which is palpably anti-national, fake and frivolous needs to be blocked, needs to be curbed. And more shameful was an observation that these channels had large viewership. So in a way, the good content was being driven out by bad content. That is the real challenge. How do we ensure that the good content gets a good viewership, a large viewership? And there's a behavioral change which is required. Why should people watch bad content over good content? Why should people watch fake content over genuine content? So there is a behavioral change pattern required, but at the same time, as long as the good content is there, TV will continue and TV will prosper. Thank you so much once again for having invited me. Thank you.
We request you, Mr. Sai, to please take your seat on the stage. You're part, of course, of the next special panel discussion. We are going to be looking now at the future of news
The TV and digital future. Yes, everyone is talking about the digital medium. Is that really the future of news? We will be talking more about that in the next panel, Krishna.
That's right, and for that fascinating panel, let me call upon the people who are going to be on stage, apart from Mr. Vikram Sahai. I'm going to invite Mr. Manoj Gairola of News Nation to please come on stage. Ms. Litisha Panda, Business Development Officer of OTV, to please come on stage. And we are also inviting Mr. Uday Reddy, the founder and CEO of Yup TV, which is one of the world's largest internet-based TV service and on-demand service provider for South Asian content, offering content in 14 languages. That's Yup TV and Uday Reddy. And I'm also inviting Mr. Rajat Wahi, Senior Director Partner Management Consulting at Deloitte. He has over 25 years of experience in CPG and consulting and has worked with global firms at senior management positions. Wonderful having him over here. Now the floor is all yours, leaving it up to the moderators of this session, Mr. Manoj Gairola and Ms. Litisha Panda, to take it from here on. Thank you.
Hello, is it good? Yeah, good morning to all of you and welcome to this session of NBF Conclave. Our topic is TV plus digital future. It is going to be a very interesting session, as all of us know that TV is declining in its present form. It is losing subscribers and digital news consumption is increasing. When I say digital news consumption, it means news consumption through mobile phones, computers and connected TV. It can be through OTT, it can be through apps, Google, Facebook, or any other social media platform. For TV broadcasters, the biggest challenge is how to generate revenue in digital space. For a media company, there are generally two sources of revenue. One is through subscription and one is through ad. Everyone loves subscription revenue. But it is very difficult to ask your subscribers to pay for news, especially in this space. CNN learned it the hard way. The company launched CNN Plus, a live streaming app. It invested close to $300 million. And this app was closed down. It was shut within a month of its launch. And in India also, I think one or two media companies have launched similar kind of app. And these apps are not doing well. Then another comes ad revenue. The biggest problem in digital space is that for ad revenue, we have to depend on big tech firms. It is mainly Google, Facebook, or other platforms. Because it is these big tech firms who carry our content to our subscribers. And we have to continuously struggle with their with their policies, algorithm, etc. And generally they collect, in many cases, they collect revenue from client and share with media companies. That is why there is always tussle between media companies and these big tech firms. So these are the challenges for TV broadcasters. And I would like to start with Mr. Wahi. So, Mr. Wahi, what do you think is the way forward for TV broadcasters?
So thank you anyway for having me on this interesting panel. So I think your points you made are very, very valid. Clearly we are moving to a digital age, a lot of digital advertising. I was reading some data in terms of the growth that the digital media has seen. Depending upon what report you read, between whether it's today if you look at the total advertising revenue, digital is accounting for between 33 to 45%, growing between 20 and 30% again, depending upon the reports you need. So it is clearly here to stay. And I think that my sense is that as the as the consumers take on media and they absorb their consumption through mobile phones. Mobile phone usage is going up. In India, it's 4.5 or almost 5 hours a day today that consumers are spending on their mobile phones.
So I think all of these trends mean that the advertising, that the news media also needs to adapt in terms of about the content, right? Because the digital is here to stay. It's not going to decrease, it's only going to increase. Today it's 45%, maybe it'll become 50%. But it's, in my view, it's not to say that it is at some point going to, completely take over from the TV to advertising, because it's like, I give the example of retail in India. Today there's a lot of noise about e-commerce becoming a large player, but after everything we look at it, almost 95% of Indian retail is still brick and mortar retail, and e-commerce only accounts for 5% of total. Even in developed markets today, in markets like the US, e-commerce accounts for only 25% of total retail. 75% is still brick and mortar retail. So I think similarly, there is going to be there is a current tussle. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about content. It's about how you reach your consumers. How do you make it easily accessible to them? Whether it's short news, relevant news, integrity, honesty, all of that stuff. So I think, yeah, it's about going to be how do you adapt your content based on the way they will consume, and you know that 5G is going to transform that even more, faster, quicker. So from that perspective, I think I think that's the way I see it.
But the basic question is how to make money. So Uday, can you enlighten us on this thing?
Hello. So before answering, I would like to give a perspective on technology itself. So the technology, when started, it was a broadcast, one-to-many, right? That's where cable and satellite has come. And today, TV also is digital actually. And if you see today, I will look at Amazon, I think post-Diwali, you may be seeing 50 million smart TVs. So it's all digital. So what is going to be different is the digital gives accurate metrics for advertisers. Every 10 seconds, your heartbeat comes, who is watching, what content is watched. So it's unlike BARC or TRP. I mean, the digital side for advertisers, there's a lot of accurate metrics available for the monetization purposes. And you have seen what mobile has done to landline in India, and what mobile data has done, disruption. And if you go back, I come from telecom background and then went to media, but what Symbian OS and Nokia used to have 70% market share. So I see that going forward, there will be a lot of disruption in the news industry. It's going to be digital, it's going to be hyper-local. So I come from Telangana, it's a Karimnagar district, Huzurabad. So the younger generation, the millennials, are watching extremely hyper-local news. They don't care about what's happening. The amount of time they spend on hyper-local is high. So today, what technology brings is the cloud playouts for the news channels, gives the ability for the broadcasters to go hyper-local. See, today any national news broadcasters can immediately launch a district-level news channel. So that is the future, and that also will give advertisers accurate metrics for them to monetize. I think that's the future. And if you see 500 million smartphones with more than coming to around 50 million TV households, it's already people are watching digital, and I think that's my view. And we are already seeing in the US, the CPMs, for example, in connected TVs are $20 CPM. So that will happen in India also, I think.
That is the question I wanted to ask you. What is your take, Litisha, on it?
I would like to continue. As rightly you pointed that, yes, as a consumer, I only know streaming services, digital. But as a second generation media entrepreneur, I'm worried. Because when you say advertising, I can't survive on only digital advertising revenue, not in India, not at the moment. And in fact, as a regional advertiser, I definitely cannot survive on digital advertising revenue. So, especially I think this conversation I was having just before our discussion, that it's become like a caste system. English is at the top of the CPM rate. Then there is Hindi, then there comes other regional languages. In fact, this is for everybody's information, Odia just got monetized on the big tech platforms. So imagine we being a 25-year-old company, being first and a pioneer in every stage, in digital, in television, everything, and yet still struggling for the CPM rate because you're either being treated as second-class citizens or I don't know. So how to bridge that gap in digital advertising? Because technically in India, I don't think anybody can survive on only digital advertising revenue. So I would like to know how do we survive is, my question would be that to learn from you.
I think that's the today's view. So we have seen how connected TV advertising in the US, now it's like $25, $30. And the fast networks have come, free ad supported television. So I think once the advertisers get to have a good number in terms of the reach, and you're able to give the exact metrics in terms of the location, the age group, which device, I think that kind of, that's going to be the future. Right now you're seeing today's point of view, but that's what happened in the US few years back. Connected TV, there is no fast networks, but now it's US is doing great, UK is doing great, Europe is going. I think India will just follow. I think it's a question of time.
But what about outlets, the different news distribution outlets, right, who take the charge of giving advertisement to us? There is no transparency in that. There is no transparency in terms of if we are giving you our content to display on your platforms, where is my revenue? Where is my share of revenue? And how do I know which ad you're playing on my content, so that you can give me royalty at least, for the least. And advertising revenue share is as it goes. But it's just so unclear at the moment that even if we have to make this change, there needs to be hope. I'm sure that, of course, there is hope by looking at different countries. But at the moment, we're moving at a lightning speed. And at this lightning speed, don't you think there has to be some regulation in terms of revenues and monetization, especially advertisement generation when, happens on my content on different platforms? So where is that transparency, and how can we get that transparency being a tech platform and, sir, from the government's perspective?
Yeah, actually this question should be pointed to Vikram Thai-ji. Actually, you see that there is a tussle between media firms and these big tech firms. And in many countries, governments have intervened and they made policy. So what is the status in our country? I mean, we are in the process of making a policy. So when it is going to happen, and what is the,
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I like this young blood speaking so well, so frankly. I think that's the angst of this generation. I mean, they would not like any type of discrimination. I mean, whatever might have happened in the past, but it is an egalitarian society and everybody has a right to have its voice. On this issue, we all know that Australia had this thing, that Australia prepared a law because the tech giants were not agreeing to the bargaining arrangement which was being offered by their competition commission, and then the parliament issued a law, and then that is being done. Here also, as I understand, and I think all of you would be aware, the matter is before the Competition Commission of India. So but let us await that. Today there was some article. Yesterday there was a decision of the Competition Commission related to Google, but that was on a different thing altogether. That was on anti-monopoly. Yeah, but there is already a matter where I think some of the broadcasters federations have already gone there. And let's await the type of investigation and the results which come from Competition Commission. But yes, it is definitely an alarming factor where if the content is mine and you piggy ride on my content, but give me pittance, it worries. But let us see how it shapes up, but we are quite concerned about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Wahi, what do you think? I mean, what is the experience in other countries like USA and Europe?
So I think most countries are struggling with this. France is also, I mean, in addition to Australia, has also now forcing the tech platforms to share a larger chunk of the revenues, building more transparency on that. I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg, because what's also happening is that we are going to see stringent privacy laws come in. So while a lot of tracking will happen in terms of who you are, what you're watching, but the privacy laws will also create more firewalls, which will also make it more difficult to do targeted marketing, etc. down the line. Because a year ago we were talking about a much bigger spread in terms of being able to access every consumer, who they are, what they buy. But a lot of the privacy laws will stop that. But I think the key conversation today is that more and more there has to be a transparency in terms of being, what is being spent on any platform, any media. And the same is happening on news today. We get so many WhatsApp groups which are circulating news on various platforms directly to us. Everybody is watching that. Nobody's getting paid for it down the line. So some level of regulatory mechanism, and again, it's always a very tricky, it's a very slippery slope. How much do you want to regulate this? Because social media today is what's going to drive it. If I look at social commerce, expected to reach $25 trillion in the next 5 years. Today it's only roughly about $4.5, $5 trillion globally. So this is going to become more and more Insta, WhatsApp, advertising, spread of news, etc. on these platforms. And I think we need to be able to, and I think most governments are maybe 2 or 3 steps behind, because tech is definitely ahead of the curve. So how do you catch up? How do you learn from other countries like France, Australia, quickly bring in some of these regulations to enable better sharing of revenues, not to control what's being spent, but to enable better sharing of revenues is the way I think the whole world is moving ahead.
So, Uday, do you think that subscribers will be willing to pay for news? Because for entertainment, generally subscribers pay, whether it is Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc. But in the case of news, what is your opinion? Or what should be the news content that subscribers are willing to pay?
So I think it depends on the content. Like the way TV9 is started, the premiumness of the content depends on that, the subscription. But there's a lot of opportunity to monetize. As I said, every 10 seconds you can take the heartbeat of every single client, what is being watched, you can integrate EPG. So there's a lot of potential on the advertising supported news as well. And connected TV is going to go really big. That is a big CPM rates going to come, because they really correlate satellite, cable as TV. And when connected TVs really take off, there's a good opportunity on the monetization. But there's a lot of resistance today for a news on a subscription, unless it's a really premium in nature. But like, let's say for example, I'm based out of Atlanta, and when Aaj or TV9 comes, or Republic, I have to see the news ads from here. So there is a technology now available to put a SCT markers on the news channels itself. So on the server side, the ads can be replaced, and that can generate a significant CP advertising revenue. And that's even in the youngsters today, millennial, they're all on mobile, short form, and the technology with cloud playout enables to have a hyper-local channels without any cost. So that will enable the monetization, and also since being capex, opex being low, it can be a great business model. Yeah.
And
with that, I have one question, sorry. My another question would be, what about the piracy that happens, outside India? Inside India, okay, we're able to regulate it, we're able to put the, piracy agencies, etc. But what happens outside India, like the NRIs and the NROs?
So we are the main, we are going through this. Actually, I met Minister also recently. It's really, really pathetic right now. Almost 90% of the international market is pirated. And we are the most affected because we are the only platform out there. Yes. People are downlinking channels, different parts, and they're uplinking. They would take content from all the OTT and they curate it, and they're selling as a boxes. So we have done a lot of extensive work. They've identified 5 main players. We're going after them, but it's a really, really big challenge. And I've been trying to convince all the broadcasters to go at least ad supported instead of getting, or a low cost, to get to reach the diaspora audience.
So I have one question for you. So with So recently I had one of the tech giants, I don't want to name them, when I had a conversation with them and I said, hey, my numbers are not, growing, it's just stuck at a certain level, in fact it's receding. So they said, oh, our algorithm has changed and we are now ranking only non-news content, not the news content. Do you think that controlling the narrative of what the people want, so that they'll only show them what is non-news and news is sort of being controlled?
Not really. I mean, that cannot be the
Will
objective.
we allow that?
I mean, we need to very closely look at what you're saying. We'll have a separate discussion on that. But definitely it cannot be a situation where a certain narrative or a certain type of content is only being allowed to be shown at the exclusion of others. And I don't think there's anything more important than good news content. Entertainment can be there, entertainment can wait, but a good news content cannot. So definitely we'll look at that particular thing, but yeah.
I have one question for you, sir. Sorry, I've taken the thing. Sorry. So with initially, earlier, the news coverage, every certain specific audience had, every specific news channel had a specific audience to deepen the news coverage, and the news coverage was thought through, right? Right now it's become so inexpensive, it's become very casual. Now everybody has the social media as they don't even look to media channels to go and say, hey, we need information. So what are the kind of tools and what are the kind of technology that we can equip our journalists and the media industry with, so that we can survive that bit?
So I think today, whether you are tracking your news journalist performance, I mean, there are large platforms available today. Again, these are large tech platforms today who can work with you, create the analytics, create the infrastructure to say what should be, how should they be able to track the performance, how should they be able to improve their effectivity, how can they also learn and get direct feed from other platforms. So enough is available today. I think in my view today, you can't do it alone. You have to partner with large tech platforms and bring them on board and say, okay, like a Google Cloud, AWS, bring them on board with you and say, okay, this is an ecosystem we want to create. We want to be able to connect with our journalists better. We want to be able to give them real time data and also enable and improve their performance. So I think it can be done. Lots of tools are available, and we can obviously discuss it and share some thoughts with you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we had a very interesting and informative session, and thank you very much for attending this session. Thank you.
Thank you all for that very enlightening session. And as we move further, joining us next is Rajya Sabha MP from Punjab, Mr. Raghav Chadha. As we also thank all of you for being a part of this. Continuing, Mr. Raghav Chadha is the National Executive Member of the Aam Aadmi Party, a young legislator. Mr. Chadha will give us